So you'll see, a few days ago I allowed myself to have a moment of, having access to my money and buying something for myself, and I decided to buy a few albums. I got this one, both of them Dream Theaters, of course, because I happen to be the huge fanboy that I am. And, well, of course, it's a view from the top of the world, and also Distance Over Time, which happens to be a fantastic album. This in particular is better than this one, in my opinion. But having the whole collection is very important for me. But that inspired me to, produce this video so we can have this conversation about the concept of the album. Because, believe it or not, I don't buy music for the sake of the songs that I know or the popular ones. I actually listen to the entire thing because I see the whole thing, the album itself, as a body of work containing music that evokes an emotion and manifests an idea into music that it's explored across the entirety of the album. That's why albums are very important, and in this video I'm gonna make the case for it, so let's have a discussion about it. Here we go. Okay, first and foremost, let's discuss the very concept of the album, because it's been around since probably the inception of recorded music, and there are plenty of things that have to be discussed about it. So let's begin from a little bit of a history lesson. Recorded music began with cylinders and then flat disc in the late 19th to early 20th century, but individual songs dominated. Collections of multiple 78 RPM discs, typically 3 to 5 minutes each, were sold in bound sets resembling photo albums. That's where the term comes from, actually. In 1948, Columbia Records introduced the long-playing vinyl record, also known as LP, that allowed 20 to 25 minutes of continuous recorded music per side, inspiring artists such as Frank Sinatra to develop mood-based concept albums like In the Wee Small Hours that was released in 1955, treating the album as a unified artistic experience. It was during the mid-60s when the concept of the album as a truly artistic expression took form, by releases from bands such as Frank Zappa and the Mothers of Invention, like Freak Out from 1966, or of course the Beatles' Rubber Soul from 1965, and especially the release of the album Sgt. Pepper's and the Lonely Hearts Club Band, turning the concept of the album as the primary creative and commercial medium for many artists. All of this paved the way for what was known as the concept album, popularized by bands such as Pink Floyd and The Who, with albums such as The Wall and Tommy, which are basically speaking telling a story from start to finish, similar to what you would see in an opera. But the reign of terror of the album had to come to an end, and it was with the release of formats such as CD and later digital downloads, allowing the listener just to listen to the songs they like, bringing the industry back to the dominance of the single. Now with that out of the way, I'm gonna give you a little bit of personal history. The first album that I ever bought was Metallica. Yes, but it's the one where they are playing with the orchestra in San Francisco, if I recall correctly. And, it's an album coming out of a live recording comprised of, basically speaking, just the bangers. While listening to that album, I realized that all of the songs were actually coming from different eras of the band. That explained to me, of course I was just a little boy, why the songs were so different in style, and even the compositions themselves, some of them were shorter, some of them were longer, and why some of the songs also worked better with the orchestra. And being the little stupid boy that I used to be back in the day, I realized that it was very fun to see that some of the songs kind of found some form of correlation with each other, while others didn't. And I realized that, of course, that happened because they were coming from completely different albums, harkening to different eras of the band. So I got intrigued to see how they fare when compared to the songs that were part of the albums from which those songs were originally produced for. So little by little, I bought my way up to the top of the Metallica collection, and I realized that some albums are better than others. And also I realized that Metallica, especially those albums after the Black Album, were filled with fillers. But also I realized that some of the older stuff were particularly great. The flow of the music from start to finish was quite, should I dare to say it, musical. It was quite, how can I put it? It felt like a movie. And still sticking to my stupid little self, I couldn't understand how they managed to pull off such a stunt. Because I was like, wow, these guys are clearly the best musicians ever, because they managed to create and compose a whole piece of music divided in different sections that evokes an emotion and kind of projects a particular idea, and it's explored throughout the album. This should have a name, right? Maybe symphony? And that's probably one of the reasons why I ended up becoming a professional music producer. Because the whole notion of being able to truly express yourself, but not only express yourself with the limitations that comes with just one song. Because by producing an album, you can actually flesh out an idea which is deeper, much more meaningful, and it's a much more dense concept rather than just what a few minutes of music can produce. As time moved on and I continued my musical journey as a little boy, I realized that I was the only kid I knew of that actually listened to an album from start to finish, because everybody was always talking about the singles and the popular tracks if you were dealing with a classic act, such as Metallica. And I wondered why. And later realized that it's a matter of course, popularity and, of course, how much street cred, at least, that gave you back in those days when I was just a kid, among your peers when it came to knowing or being familiar with the tracks that were popular at the time. During anybody's formative years, music plays a huge role because we use music as an extension of our own personality. Thus, listening to music that is popular provides some sense of belonging. That's one of the reasons why teenagers are usually one of the target demographics for the music industry. At that point, I couldn't tell how important that would be when it came to the production of music itself, because later on, when I started working as a professional in this business, I realized that a good chunk of the music being produced today, it's focused mostly on the sound of the single, the one that is going to be spearheading the release, rather than the entirety of the album, producing what is known now as, well, lackluster sounding music, if you want to be gentle, also known as modern music. Devoid of feels, devoid of any form of emotion, formulaic, and even the sound itself started to degrade because all of the records began to sound the same way because they are produced under the same auspices, just focusing on the sound of the single rather than the sound of the entirety of the album. Of course, creating the continuous cycle of never listening to the album and giving reasons for people to stick to the singles. And by the time iTunes appeared and gave you a proper legal way to acquire just the single rather than buying the entirety of the album, well, you can imagine how much this paradigm continues. Playing a bit of the devil's advocate, there are plenty of records that are famous for being just crowded with filler content. And I'm not gonna deny that. And actually, that's much more common nowadays than it used to be back in the day. But that shouldn't be a reason for you to never listen to the entirety of an album. There are plenty of things you're missing out. One of them is the emotional ride that it actually is when you're listening to something like, I don't know, ABC's The Lexicon of Love, and how the music progresses across time. Not only giving you the sense of an accomplishment by the time the final track finishes, you feel like you actually went through a ride. The same what happens with Synchronicity by The Police as well. But not everything's perfect, of course, and there are albums that, even though they are fantastic pieces of music, they're not necessarily speaking an easy listen. One of them, and probably the first example that comes to my mind, is The Wall by Pink Floyd. It's a fantastic record, sounds amazing, amazing songs, part of the Western canon, I would say, but the album itself is a hard listen, at least for someone who is not prepared for what is about to happen. Because when I got it, and I got it when I was already old enough to give myself the chance to pay attention to something like that, and also I was already considered myself at least a huge fan of the band, I had a hard time listening to it. Not because the music sucked, it's because the scope of the album and the ambitious nature of it made it kind of a very hard sell to me, because there are moments in which it's basically soundscapes rather than music. And when I watched the movie, I realized why. Because the movie itself is probably the ultimate way to listen to the album, because it was produced with that particular vision in mind. So you can see that there is plenty of artistic value behind the concept of the album that has been lost due to our mass consumption ideology and the way that we see music, particularly today, as a throwaway product or even worst, content that should be consumed rather than an artistic expression that should be experienced. Nowadays, people doesn't take music as important as they should. Not because music sucks, because I can also grant you that. I already made several cases or several points regarding how much modern music tends to be very bad sounding and badly produced. But great music is still being produced today, and people are not giving themselves the chance to experience it because we always have this following the crowd mentality, not not fear of missing out, if that makes better sense to you, and feeling part of a tribe rather than being the trendsetter and dictating the way you would like to enjoy life by enjoying great music. In summary, I think the album is the ultimate form of musical expression we got in the current era. It's very similar to what the composers of old used to do with their symphonies. And of course, I'm talking about the good shit, right? Not the run-of-the-mill bargain bin horrible sounding tracks that are mass-produced. Now, with everything said, I'm going to give you some recommendations for great albums for you to get started with the whole notion of listening to an album from start to finish. So I'm going to begin with a band that I have plenty of gripes with, but I can't deny that this album is an excellent debut album. And of course, I'm talking about Metallica. And the album itself is, of course, Kill 'Em All. It's not their best record by any means, but it's probably their best and most consistent album, in my opinion. It has plenty of great songs and is very consistent when it comes to the quality of the compositions. Sound-wise, of course, it sounds terrible because it's their first album and, well, you know the drill. But from the perspective of a body of work, the consistency, the quality of the compositions, and how great the interaction between the songs is unmatched. I think they never managed to release an album as consistent as that one. Of course, better albums, everything afterwards, and ending with the Black Album. Now, another album from another band that I have plenty of things to say about. This is Pearl Jam's, and of course, it's their debut as well, and this is 10. This is probably, in my opinion, the gold standard when it comes to consistency, quality of the music, the compositions, and also the sound of the record itself when it comes to describing the debut album of any band. Why? The sound of the recordings is excellent and it's appropriate for the sound of the band, and it's also unique sound, and it's very, very easy for you to know that you're listening to 10 just by a few seconds of any of the tracks playing. It comes loaded with plenty of bangers, plenty of songs that are very popular, and I think it's a great, great introduction to anybody who would like to truly submerge themselves into the realm of album listening. Another one, this is coming from an earlier decade. This is Tears for Fears, Songs from the Big Share. That's an insane record because it's gonna take you from pop, 80s pop, to incredibly crazy and fantastically produced prog rock. Amazing. Great music all around, fantastic sounding record with plenty of personality once again, and also has some of the most popular tracks by the band. Now something a bit more metal, and this is gonna be Surtur Rising by Amon Amarth. Power metal, but it's Viking metal, wherever you call it, wherever you want. They are metal, and they're a great band. I know that they're a bit of on the sellout side of things. Being a metalhead myself, I understand your points, but nonetheless, it's a fantastic band, and this record is excellent. It's not as good as Twilight of the Thunder God when it comes to the quality of the best songs, if that makes sense to you, but once again, we're talking about consistency and overall sound. And in this case, Surtur Rising, it's in my opinion their most solid work to date. And in total contrast, I'm gonna also suggest you to listen to Miles Davis's album Kind of Blue. One of my favorite records ever by all of the reasons, all of the right reasons. Fantastic music, incredible compositions, incredible performances across the board, incredible lineup, and well, it's probably one of the best albums ever produced. Besides me liking it this much. It's great sounding, of course, it sounds like a record from that era, and also it sounds like a jazz record from that era, but it's beautiful. It's amazing musical speaking. It's a masterclass on how to lead a band. I think Miles was one of the best band leaders ever. And in here you can hear him taking and getting the most out of the fantastic musicians that were involved in the production of the album. Just a masterclass in everything that comes with great music. And once again, it's an album that you should listen to from start to finish, because the entirety of it, even though it's not a long album, is going to truly inspire you to be better as a human being. It's that good. So there you got it. What do you think? Do you still listen to albums as a whole? Please let me know in the comment section down below. And of course, also give me your recommendations of other great albums that we can listen and enjoy from start to finish. Thank you for joining, thank you for watching. If you found something useful in this video, please consider subscribing and also leaving a like. Now, as with every single time that I meet you, I gotta say thank you, and also should remind you that you should never let anybody tell you what to dream about. And remember that I'll see you when I see you.